Hello and a hearty welcome to Study Room. This is Prataksha, your geography teacher, and I'm here to discuss with you the fourth chapter in geography named Agriculture. Agriculture, which is also known as farming. In this part, in this chapter, we'll be learning about the definition, the accurate definition of agriculture. What do we mean when we say the term agriculture? Next, we'll be learning about the different crops that are grown, the major crops that are grown, and what are the necessary conditions, the adequate conditions required for the growth of each crops. And we'll be also learning the process or the necessary steps that we can take in order to ensure that each and every one of us is getting an access to nutritious and healthy food. So with that, let's get started with the chapter. Before coming to the proper definition of agriculture, let's talk about three important processes that are involved when we're talking about a finished product, the consumption of a finished product by a human being. So for example, let's talk about bread. The bread that you eat at your home, the packet of bread that you buy from the market and that you eat at home, there are three kind of processes that are involved in the making, in the production and the distribution of that packet of bread. The first process is the primary process, where the respective crop is being grown. All right, that natural resource from which you're getting that packet of bread. Or it's not just restricted to growing crops. We can also talk about eggs. We can also talk about meat. Okay, so not just crops, but also the products that you're getting from livestock, from animals, right? So here, for example, that I'm taking of bread. So in the production of bread, the primary process would involve the production of the crops, such as that of wheat. All right, so all of the processes required, the cropping, the sowing and harvesting, all of these processes, mainly the agriculture that we'll be learning about in this chapter, is there incorporated into the primary process. Next will be coming up the secondary process. Okay, the secondary process is basically the processing of that natural product that you have already grown, or that you have been rearing or procuring from plants or animals. So here in the case of bread, it will be the processing of those wheat crops into proper grains, and then making of all those grains of the grainy powder or that atta that you're getting from that wheat crops, procuring the atta from that piece of crop, and then making of that flour into the piece of bread that you will be consuming. So all of that process, all of that you can say the industrial treatment of that natural resource is there incorporated into the secondary process. Next comes up the tertiary process. The tertiary process is finally, as you can also see here in the video, the packaging and the transporting of the finished product. All right, transporting and packaging and transporting to nearby markets, or sometimes also towards a respective home as well. Okay, so all of that, even trade that is involved in the when a finished product is packaged, when it is supposed to be transported, then the different kinds of trades that are involved, from the manufacturer, from the wholesaler, and finally when you go to buy that packet of bread, okay, or eggs, or whatever the product may be from the market, all of those are coming into the tertiary process. So there are three processes involved when you're consuming a particular product. All right. With that, let's come to the definition of agriculture. Agriculture is nothing but farming. It is a science, it is a system where appropriate conditions are taken into account when a particular crop is being grown. What are the different kinds of conditions? The different conditions could be the terrain, the topography of a particular area, right? Then soil, what are the nutrients that are available in that soil, and what kind of soil is available in a particular terrain, whether it is alluvial, whether it is loamy, whether it is sandy, right? Next, we'll be talking about the temperature, okay, climate. So would the temperature, the temperature required for the growing of a particular crop, would it be a high temperature, would it be low temperature, would it be moderate temperature? Then we'll be talking about rainfall, whether that particular crop requires heavy rain or it requires a heavy irrigation of water. or whether it can only survive in low or moderate water. All right. So all these conditions, the terrain, the topography, then the soil, the nutrients that it is supposed to get from the kind of soil. All right. Then temperature, rainfall, also humidity. All of these are taken into account when we are discussing or when we are talking about agriculture or farming or growing of a particular crop. All right. And besides farming, agriculture now also includes the growing or the breeding of livestock or animals. So, milk, for example, or eggs or meat that you're getting from, say, poultry, like hens, right? So, all of these are also now incorporated into the term agriculture. Okay, interestingly, 50% of the world are 50% people of the world, people in the world, they are involved in agriculture. And India, agriculture is the major source of, you can say, occupation or major source of trade, because two-thirds of the people in India, they practice agriculture or they are involved in agriculture. So agriculture is a science, it is a system where farming as well as the rearing, breeding of livestock, all of these are involved. Okay, and the land, the suitable land on which a particular crop is able to grow. Okay, that suitable piece of land is known as arable land. Not all pieces of land would be suitable for the growth of crops, right? So all of those lands that are suitable for the growth of crops, those lands are known as arable lands. Okay. Some important terms that you need to remember: agriculture. Okay, the term that you'll be learning about in this chapter. Then sericulture, pisciculture, viticulture, and horticulture. So all of these all of these terms on the left hand side are, you can say, the prefix, and the suffix that will be attached to all of these terms is the word culture. The word culture means cultivation. Okay, how you are processing on with the rearing, breeding, or cultivating of cultivation of that particular item, right? So in the case of agriculture, it could be crops, it could be also livestock. All right, like I just explained you in the previous slide. In the case of sericulture, it is the breeding and the processing of the items that you're getting from silkworms, right? From silkworms. So sericulture is the breeding of silkworms in order to obtain silk from them that is then sold for commercial purpose. And pisciculture is the breeding of fishes. Okay, different variety of fish. Okay, viticulture is about grapes. All right. And lastly, horticulture is about the commercial use, the commercial production, the commercial cultivation of vegetables, flowers, and fruits. Okay. So there are flower markets, right, where different exotic flowers are sold into the respective markets, right? And people go and buy those fancy flowers, bouquets, or roses, different kinds of roses, different kinds of orchids, flowers, right? So the commercial production of vegetables, flowers, and fruits, the science or the term or the system that is required for the commercial growth of these items, that process is known as horticulture. So these are the different terms. Next, the farm system, or in the agriculture, the system that I was talking about, we will be learning about this now. All right. So in the production of a particular crop, okay, there are certain inputs, and then those inputs are processed in a certain way so that we are getting our desired output into that into that desired, into that required quality or quantity. Okay, so the inputs that are taken into account when we're talking about a farm system in agriculture, those inputs are definitely, first of all, the seeds, right? The kind of machinery that you'll be using, whether you'll be using a tractor or whether you'll be using bullocks, all right, for plowing of the fields and everything. Okay, then the chemicals, the fertilizers, or the pesticides that you will be using. So fertilizers, they are used to increase the nutrient amount of the soil, and pesticides, they are used to get rid of the different pests or the insects that may cause harm or that may pose a threat to the growth of healthy crops. All right, then the processes that are involved is the plowing of the field, where you will eventually sow the seeds, right? Then sowing, then spraying it, like you can see here in this picture, spraying with important pesticides, okay, or the scattering of fertilizers. Then irrigation is also important because crops need water, right? So irrigation would also come under the process. Then weeding, some unnecessary crops also grow along with the necessary ones, so removal of those unnecessary crops, because they may acquire all the nutrients or all the water, absorb the nutrients water, and that may render the availability, decrease the availability of water or nutrients to the important crops that are supposed to grow. So weeding, okay, and harvesting, the final uprooting of the crops when they are finally ripe, okay, that process is known as harvesting. So all of these processes are involved, and after that the output that we'll be getting is would be our final crop, the crop that we desire in that respective quality and in that respective quantity, okay. So for both of these, quality and quantity, we are ensuring that the processes that are supposed to be followed, the plowing, sowing, spraying, weeding, irrigation, and finally harvesting, they are done in a proper mechanized manner. So all of these, you can say, processes or activities or steps that are taken in order to procure that output product comes under farm system. All right, and I remember I told you about the primary process that is involved in obtaining a finished product that you buy from the market. So from this activity, you must be able to relate that all of this is coming under that primary process. Okay, under that primary process that I first talked to you about when I was opening up this chapter to you, and all of these is then coming under what? All of these is coming under the term agriculture. Okay. Then there are two types of farming or two types of agriculture involved. Firstly, it is named subsistence farming. This will be the first farming that we'll be looking upon. The second that we'll be also learning in the respective slides is commercial farming. All right. So what is subsistence farming then? The kind of farming that is done for the mere survival. Okay, why just for the mere survival? Because the kind of plot that a particular farmer has could be less, it could not be a lot, and the second factor could be the farmer could be poor. Okay, so the different technologies that are there, for example, you have high yielding varieties of seeds. Okay, so the farmer may not be open up to buying all those seeds due to lack of money. Okay, so poor quality of seeds, then low technology. So just the kind of farming that the farmer is supposed to do for the mere survival of his respective family, that is known as subsistence farming. Okay, so the type of farming practice to meet the needs of the farmer's family, producing small outputs. Since it is only required, it is only done to meet the needs of the farmer's family, so the output would be low, it would not be for commercial purpose, right? And since the respective family could be poor, could or could not be poor, it depends. But in the broad term of the subsistence farming, we are assuming that there is a lack of resources, right? So therefore, there would be a minimum use of technology and labor, and often the family members are involved in helping in helping the respective farmer in the farming processes. All right. So subsistence farming is divided into two types: intensive and primitive farming. All right. When we are talking about intensive farming, we have to keep in mind that yes, there is that quality of subsistence farming that the farmer may be using low technology or minimum labor. Okay, but the use of the word intensive here implies that there is a certain availability of resource to that farmer. So whatever resources he may be having, he's incorporating all of those resources into farming, and it is intensive, it is extreme, right? So therefore in intensive farming, the farmer may grow more than one type of crops annually. All right, and also the kind of technology that he uses, it may or may not be modern, it depends. Okay, so he may be using a tractor, or sometimes the tractor could be his, sometimes the tractor could be on rent. Okay, and he may be using traditional methods such as plowing by his own hands with the use of some equipments, or plowing by bullock carts. All right, then What next? Intensive farming also implies that the kind of products that he's getting, the final products, it is also getting, it is therefore it is obviously involved to meet the needs of the respective farmer's family. But if there is a surplus of the products that he's sowing and reaping and harvesting, then that surplus product could also be sold into the market. Okay, so there is a certain availability of resource when we are talking about intensive farming to a respective farmer. Primitive farming involves, the term implies primitive means the older methods that a farmer used to employ before he got settled by the riverside and before he started living there permanently. These the two types of primitive farming are shifting cultivation and nomadic herding. So we'll be learning about each of these in the respective slides. So intensive subsistence agriculture, I already told you that whatever resources the farmer may be having, he's incorporating all of those resources into this kind of farming. So whatever labor he can hire, so the labor support is maximum. Whatever labor he can hire, it may be from his own family and it may extend apart from his own family members. All right. And since there is availability of a certain resources, right? So we are assuming here that the kind of crops that he will be growing would be not just one, but more than one. So growth of more than one crop annually. And since he is growing more than one crop annually, so the conditions required for the growth of that crop, namely sunlight, namely soil, namely availability of water, it is therefore implicit in understanding that all of these are already available to him. That is why he is able to grow more than one crop annually. And what is the main crop that he grows? Rice. Apart from rice, wheat, maize, pulses, oilseeds, etc. All right. Mainly, this kind of farming is employed in areas that are already very populated, because in populated areas only, if that particular farmer is able to produce a surplus number of finished products, so in a populated area only he would be able to take that surplus and sell them in the market areas, right? So this kind of agriculture is practiced in populated areas. Whatever the resources the farmer has, it is involved, all of those resources are involved, and is practiced mainly in the monsoon regions of Southeast and East Asia. Why monsoon regions? Because so that the availability of water is there for that respective farmer. So all of these come under the intensive subsistence agriculture. Okay. Now, there are two types of primitive subsistence agriculture: shifting cultivation and nomadic herding. Okay, and like I had explained to you before, the use of the word primitive over here implies that this respective farmer is using, this respective farmer is using those kind of methods in agriculture and cultivation and rearing of livestock that were there before a farmer got settled into a place by the riverside permanently. Therefore, the use of the word primitive. Okay, and there are two types: shifting cultivation, where a farmer shifts from one place to another, and nomadic herding is also where the farmer is not attached to one area permanently, rather he keeps on shifting. Okay, like a nomad. All right. Now, with this video, you'll be learning about shifting cultivation. Shifting cultivation is called by different names in different areas. Okay, in India, in the northeast side, it is known as jhuming. Okay, then in Mexico, it is known by the name milpa. In Brazil, it is known by the name roca. Sorry, and in Malaysia, it is known by the name ladang. Okay, what is then this shifting cultivation? This shifting cultivation is basically where whatever land the farmer is using, okay, when the soil, the nutrient availability of the soil of that particular land gets exhausted, and when adequate sunlight or humidity or rainfall is not getting available to that particular area, then the farmer, what he does, like you can see here in this video, he burns whatever the remaining crops were there in that particular area. He burns all that area, okay, and then he shifts to some other piece of land in order to continue his farming. Okay, so this kind of farming is very destructive in nature. Why? Because whatever piece of landing he is using, till the time that there is some availability of soil nutrients, proper amount of sunlight, rainfall, whatever conditions are required for the growth of that particular crop that he is growing, till all those conditions are met, the farmer is there cultivating, and as soon as the nutrients are exhausted or the climate changes, the farmer then burns everything and moves to new area. So therefore he shifts all of his activities to some other place, and therefore the name of the shifting cultivation. The disadvantage is that since he is burning everything down, right? So there is that piece of land has lost its chance of replenishing with new nutrients again. He's canceling all those possibilities because he's burning all of the remaining pieces of organic pieces, organic plant pieces, right? So he is ensuring that that piece of land becomes a wasteland or barren land. And also, since he's chopping everything down, the remaining plants, and burning them, therefore he's also incorporating, or he's also aiding towards deforestation. So these are the disadvantages of shifting cultivation. All right. Yeah. Then you have nomadic herding. Okay, in nomadic herding, the farmer that is there, he shifts from one place to another. Okay, in search of food, in search of fodder, and in search of water. Okay, food for himself, for his families if they are shifting along with him. Okay, fodder for his respective livestock, since there is the use of the word herding over here, so it is assumed that there is cattle that we're talking about. Okay, and water for both for himself, for his family, and for his animals. So what kind of animals are involved? Sheep, camel, yak, goats are the most commonly reared animals, and the products that he get from those animals are milk, meat, wool, hides, etc. Okay, so all of these are being performed. Why? Because there would be a difference, you can say, difference in terrain where he is living. Okay, and also difference in the climatic resources, or the climatic conditions, not resources. Okay, what climatic conditions? Sunlight, rainfall. So whenever he is sensing the climate is changing, or the terrain is not favorable to him or his respective cattle, because the cattle or the herd may graze all over that particular area, and then there would be no availability, there will be no availability of pasture land or grazing land. Okay, then the farmer along with his livestock may shift like a nomad from one place to another. Okay, in that process, what he does is, there is no harm to environment as such, as long as he is not ridding that respective pasture land of all its vegetation. Okay, then the next thing that is involved here is that the conditions, the terrain. Okay, like I told you, terrain matters here, and it is mostly observed that in arid areas, in dry areas, such as those of such as in India, basically in Rajasthan, in Jammu and Kashmir, and in the Sahara Desert. Okay, in Central Asia, in all of these dry areas, in all of these arid areas, where the people have to travel to faraway locations in search of food, in search of water and fodder for their animals. In all of these areas, nomadic herding is practiced. Okay, then this was all about subsistence farming. Now we'll be moving on to the second kind of farming that was there, commercial farming. The name implies that this farming is not done for the mere subsistence of a farmer, or just for a little bit of profit, like we have already seen in intensive subsistence farming. Rather, in this kind of farming, the whatever you can say products that are there, getting whatever products that are there in the finished line of the tertiary process, all of those products are involved in commercial purposes, in trading, in transporting. So there has to be an extensive transport network in commercial farming, right? So most of the crops that are grown, they are grown for sale in the markets, and therefore we are talking about a large scale production. So the human labor has to be decreased, and there has to be an increase in the work done by machines. Okay. So artificial labor, all right. And there are three kinds of commercial farming involved: commercial grain farming, mixed farming, and plantation farming. So let's learn about each of them. Commercial grain farming. In commercial grain farming, like the term implies here, uh, crops or grains are produced in commercial quantity in large quantities, uh, often for the sole reason of sale. Okay, and since the main agenda is for sale, okay, so we have to consider in mind that the areas, the farmlands that would be there, should be in should be, you can say, it should be, in a very large expanse of land. All right, so the area of that farming land should be more. Okay, so more farming areas should be there. Okay, and since we are talking about an increase in the space of farming, okay, so we have to also keep in mind that there should be less population there. All right, so sparsely populated area, because if there are people living nearby, then how can you dislocate them and just extend your piece of farming area? In order to extend your piece of farming area, you have to make sure that there are not enough people living nearby. So sparsely populated area where you can expand your farming areas, more farming areas, more and more hectares of farming areas. Therefore, this is mainly practiced in temperate grasslands where the availability of not availability, rather the extent of population is not so much. Okay, and is practiced mainly in North America, Europe, Asia, etc. Maize and wheat are the most commonly grown commercial grain crops, and also in case of extreme winter, the winter restricts the growth of crop to and limits it to just one crop. So you cannot grow multiple crops in case of winter, just one crop, because there are different climatic conditions required for the growth of different crops. Okay, next is the mixed farming. In mixed farming, both the cultivation of plants or crops is also going on, and the rearing of livestock is also going on. So the land is used for growing food as well as fodder crops as well as rearing livestock. So in order to ensure that your livestock is healthy, so that they can give you enough, say, eggs, or enough meat, or enough wool in the case of sheep. Okay, so you have to ensure that your livestock are also eating enough food, and also hygienic food. All right, so you have to ensure that the area in which you're growing your grains, you are also growing some fodder crops for these animals, and then you also have land available where you can keep your livestock in a healthy environment, in a clean environment, where you can rear them properly. Okay, and the areas involved in mixed farming are Europe, Eastern USA, okay, Argentina, Southeast. I'm writing Southeast by the term SE, Southeast Australia, New Zealand, and South Africa. So all of these areas, there has to be an availability of land. Land has to A large area of land has to be available, because you have to take care of two things, right? You have to also grow your commercial grain crops, and you also have to look after your livestock. Okay, so vast expanses of land. All right. Next is the plantation farming, and in plantations, you have to remember that there is only growth of one crop. Okay, and that growth of one crop is huge in number. It's for commercial use, so it's huge in number, and often a whole stretch of farm, okay, hectares and hectares of land, uh, uh, all of that is dedicated to the growth of this one crop. Okay, so there has to be an adequate availability of sunlight, adequate availability of temperature, important soil nutrients, so that this one crop that we are growing is meeting the commercial need. So therefore, these plantations, they require large amounts of labor and capital, because in the case of depletion of nutrients, soil nutrients, you have to be ready. You have to be ready as soon as you are sensing that the soil, they do not have enough nutrients. As soon as your you know people that are involved in that respective area, they tell you that you have to, ensure that more pesticides or more fertilizers are getting distributed adequately in all that area. So you have to be ready to procure all those items. So you have to have sufficient capital, you have to have large amounts of labor. Crops may be processed on the farm or in the nearby factory. So the processing of the harvested crops. So that is the secondary process that we talked about in the beginning of the chapter, where that respective crop is made into processed into the respective product that you'll be getting at the markets, right? That is done either on the farm or in the nearby factories. Mostly it is done nearby factories. And what kind of crops are we here talking about? We are talking about rubber, we are talking about cotton, we are talking about tea, coffee, okay, even banana. All right, all of these are grown in plantations area. All right, rubber, for example, it is grown in the region of Malaysia. Coffee, the leading producer of coffee is Brazil. And tea, you know that there are tea plantations in India in the region of Assam. Sri Lanka is also leading producer of tea. So all of these areas are involved in the plantation farming. You can see here in this video that the man is picking up the tea leaves very tenderly, right? There are important climatic conditions that this particular tea leaves need, okay? And in the plantations area, all of these requisites are met. Okay, the amount of sunlight that is required, the amount of rainfall that is required, okay, the soil nutrients, all of these are kept in mind. And it is often performed, it is often cultivated in terraced area, in slopes area. All right, the hills, they're cut into slopes. Remember terrace farming? Okay, so that is incorporated into the agriculture, into the cultivation of these tea leaves. All right, and it is ensured that a large amount of capital and labor is there for the growth of this of all these tea leaves, for the growth of this particular plantation, because you need large amounts of large number of people for plucking the tea leaves, because they're very tender. All right, so this all of these you had to study in this part of the chapter. In the next part, I'll be taking you through some important crops, some major crops that are grown, for example wheat, rice, maize, cotton, and we'll be talking about the necessary climatic conditions that are required for the growth of each crop. So all of these in the next part of the chapter.